Hello and welcome to this special show marking the Kingdom of Bahrain's Diplomatic Day. I'm Yasmin Ibrahim. January 14th is a special day for Bahrain and the Diplomatic Corps, which is a day that reminds us of the deep-rooted Bahraini diplomacy that has spanned over 50 years since the establishment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1971. With numerous achievements and successes over the last 5 decades, thanks to the generous efforts and continuous giving at all levels. The Bahraini diplomacy is an expression of the principles of our foreign policy based on good neighborliness and promotion of world peace, and a sincere reflection of the nature of our authentic Bahraini society, whose distinctive features have always been openness, coexistence, and mutual respect. We have a lot lined up in this very special coverage. Stay tuned, we will be back with more right after this.
في يوم الدبلوماسية البحرينية التي خصصنا لها مناسبة وطنية سنوية، وذلك للاحتفاء والإشادة بدورها في إرساء ثوابت علاقاتنا الدولية وسياساتنا الخارجية القائمة على الثقة المتبادلة وحسن الجوار واحترام المصالح المشتركة لتعزيز الاستقرار والسلام العالمي.
The celebration of Bahrain's Day of Diplomacy reflects the great interest shown by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa in diplomatic work, which has defined the principles and foundations of foreign policy, its diplomacy and objectives, in order to achieve the homeland supremacy among the nations, defend its sovereignty, independence, and interests, as well as extend bridges of cooperation with all countries of the world. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs derives from the wisdom of His Majesty, the King, his enlightened visions and insightful thinking, what helps it to perform its duties and responsibilities to the fullest. Bahrain's diplomatic work is based on His Majesty's firm visions to promote tolerance, coexistence, and cultural exchange among all people, religions, and beliefs, to spread the values of peace, brotherhood among all. The Kingdom of Bahrain will continue to follow a foreign policy approach characterized by moderation, balance, flexibility, harmony, and constructive cooperation with various nations and peoples. In compliance with the directives of His Majesty the King and the esteemed government headed by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and within the framework of international charters and laws, Bahraini women have an outstanding mark in Bahraini's diplomacy due to the unlimited royal support provided to Bahraini women. They had attained different leading, diplomatic, and decision-making posts, and that had opened wide aspects to perform their role as men's partner in building the aspired modern Bahrain by everyone.
Welcome back. The outstanding achievements in the Bahrain's diplomacy is thanks to the royal care of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa that reflects belief in the importance of Bahraini diplomacy in strengthening friendship and cooperation relations between the Kingdom of Bahrain and all countries of the world, defending the supreme interests of the kingdom and its honorable citizens, and consolidating its regional and international standing. To talk more about that, we are joined here in the studio by Chief of America's Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Abdullah bin Ali bin Khalifa Al Khalifa. Hello, Sheikh Abdullah, and thank you for joining us here at the studio today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So marking the Diplomatic Day, can you tell us about the development of the Kingdom of Bahrain in the diplomatic field?
Sure. So we are very fortunate to benefit from a rich history of Bahraini diplomacy stretching back to the founding of Bahrain in 1783. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs itself was established around 1969, and since then we have been able to grow and achieve really, we've been able to place Bahrain amongst the leading nations of the world. Not only were we a founding member of the GCC, and a member of the Arab League. We were also the, I think, 129th member of the United Nations. We participated or were active members in the UN Security Council and other high-level councils like the Economic and Social Council and the Human Rights Council. Throughout those years, we've been able to establish around 35 embassies and consulates around the world to further our economic and political interests, and also to serve Bahraini citizens across the globe. We've been able to welcome as well about 39, I think, embassies up till now, and we're hoping to expand that. And this resulted in a lot of achievements. We have agreements with around 40 countries in the world. We have free trade agreements. We have agreements that have paved the way for trade and investment. We have defense partnerships which have contributed to peace and security in the region. And all of that has been achieved in a relatively short period of time, but we hope to build on that in the coming years.
So on that note, you've mentioned that Bahrain enjoys friendly relations with the world.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the history and development in its outstanding relations with the United States?
Sure. Well, we have really a very special relationship with the United States. Our relationship began people to people, in the sense that it was before governments even got involved. The American Mission Hospital established a clinic at the time in 1888. And so the first interaction really between Bahrainis and Americans was Americans providing healthcare to Bahrainis at that time, and it developed from there. So the official relations began much later, but then it blossomed really into a strategic relationship. We have excellent political ties. We have a free trade agreement with the United States. The United States is one of our major trade and investment partners, and the defense partnership as well as security partnership is robust, and it has contributed immensely to the safety and security of our entire region. As you know, Bahrain is host to the U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet. There are combined task forces, naval task forces, that help secure not only the Arabian Gulf but the wider region, and all of this is possible because of our close partnership. But we should not forget as well that it started people to people, and it really remains that. And we have shared values, and I think going forward, not only do we want to maintain and enhance what we already have in the economic, political, and defense fields, but we also want to increase the people-to-people ties. And that's what we've been working on, and we're continuing to work on that.
So not only the United States, Bahrain also has relations with other Asian countries, which are always flourishing. So can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Our relations with countries in Asia is some of our oldest, naturally being part of West Asia. Just this past year, in 2021, we celebrated 50 years of relations with both India and Pakistan. Our relations with India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are special in the sense that we have a lot of communities here in Bahrain who call Bahrain home and who contribute to our development and as well help their countries back home. So it's a very beneficial partnership. We have obviously a lot of trade ties with South Asia, and we're always looking forward to maintain and develop those ties. When it comes to East Asia, some of our major trade partners are in that region. Around 17% of our exports is to East Asia. Around 20% of our imports from that region. Namely, we have excellent trade relations and relations with China, Japan, and South Korea. They're really very long-standing and historic, and we've been able to benefit mutually from these partnerships, whether it be through trade, mutual investment, and we look forward to enhancing that. When it comes to Southeast Asia, in 2019, we acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in ASEAN. And we're the first GCC country to do so. And what that has done is it has opened the door for further cooperation with the countries of ASEAN, which we've had excellent relations with. And it's really provided us a platform through which we can develop those ties. We are looking to increase our diplomatic presence as well in Asia in the years to come.
Okay, so we've talked about initiatives in the United States or with the United States and in Asia. The Kingdom of Bahrain also has strategic relations with European countries. Can you tell us more about how Bahrain consolidates that?
Sure, thank you. Well, for Europe, I'd like to talk about the UK specifically in a sense, because we have a very long and historic relationship with the United Kingdom. 2016, we celebrated 200 years of relations with the United Kingdom, and our relations with the UK encompasses pretty much all fields, and it's long-standing. We have biannual meetings at government level to enhance, to explore ways to enhance, even further enhance our cooperation. When it comes to Europe, just this year, 2022, we are celebrating 50 years of relations with France and Germany. And they remain some of our major partners in Europe, some of our major trade partners as well.
Yeah.
A lot of investments here in Bahrain are from France and Germany. And we look forward to developing that.
Yeah.
We've also witnessed in the previous couple of years enhanced relations with Italy. We established an embassy there. Recently, we've had high-level visits, and we're looking forward to, working on those as well. And finally, Greece and Cyprus as well. We've in the past couple of years, we've had multiple high-level visits, and we're looking to enhance those relations. Those aren't just, we have relations with all other countries in Europe as well. We have trade ties with Switzerland, Belgium, are some of our major trade partners. And we're always looking to enhance and always looking to build upon what we have and also to establish new partnerships.
All right, so from your point of view, can you tell us what are the main fields that can witness upcoming cooperation between Bahrain and the rest of the world?
Sure. We're in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we're focused on three main pillars.
Yeah.
One is promoting peace. The second is sustainable development. And the third is human rights.
All right.
And so what we mean by promoting peace is that, without peace and security, nothing else is possible.
Yeah.
Development is not possible. Tackling some of the challenges that we face as a global community isn't possible without peace and security. So from our part, what we are supporting and initiating initiatives to further peace and security in our own region and in the rest of the world. So that's one of our main sort of pillars going forward. The second is sustainable development, which is not only just trade and investment, because that's a part of it, but also many other issues which were outlined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We've achieved our targets from the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. And we're currently working to enhance our efforts in these fields. Perhaps one of the most important parts of sustainable development in the next coming years is the global effort to tackle climate change. And we are working towards achieving the pledge that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister to achieve net zero emissions by 2060 and a 30% reduction by 2035. This requires a lot of cooperation with countries, and that is something that we are focused on.
Yeah.
Among other things. So that's the sort of sustainable development part. And third, we're focused on promoting human rights and showcasing not only Bahrain's achievements, but sort of our values and what we believe and what we're currently doing for the people of Bahrain. And human rights encompasses the promotion of women's participation in the workforce. It encompasses as well tackling human trafficking And we've, for the past 2 years, we've achieved the Tier 1 status in the US State Department Human Rights Report. And that's something that we're proud of, and that's something that we want to continue working on. So those are mainly our sort of focus in the coming years.
All right. So before we conclude, is there anything you would like to add?
Sure. I would like to. We did mention one part of the world, which our relations are kind of growing, which is South America. We established our first embassy in South America in 2018 in Brazil, and we're looking to expand our relations there. And we received the president of Brazil recently, who opened an embassy here in Bahrain, and that's the first South American embassy to be resident in Bahrain. So that's an area of the world that we are also developing our ties with, and we hope to enhance it in the future years.
Thank you so much for being with us here on this very special program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
The Bahrain diplomacy is definitely the product of continuous institutional work and tireless individual and collective efforts. Stay tuned as we continue the special coverage marking the Diplomatic Day after this short break. Welcome back to the special program marking the Diplomatic Day. The Kingdom of Bahrain and the United States of America enjoy deep-rooted, outstanding mutual relations and constant cooperation in various fields. Such ties are highly supported by the two countries' leaderships and consolidated through exchanged fruitful visits that result in further expansion of aspects of collaboration on several aspects. To talk more about that, we are pleased to be joined here at the studio by Counselor in America's Affairs Sector at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Salman Al-Jalahma. Hello, Mr. Salman, and thank you for joining us here at the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us about your journey in the diplomatic field and how it has developed?
Well, interestingly, I never really thought I would end up working in diplomacy. I was working in communications in the private sector, but I always felt that there was more I can do. There was a better way I can serve my community and my country. And then I was asked to serve as a media attaché in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And that was a relatively new role for Bahrain in D.C. And I'm sure you're aware that this hyper-information age that we do live in today, it's critical for all governments to have representatives that work with the media and to liaise with them. And I think it's important that all countries put a conscious effort to actually contextualize their policy decisions and to be able to be the narrators of their own story and help create that brand image.
Correct. So youth has a great role in your field. So from your experience that you just shared, can you tell us more about that?
Well, if you think about the fact that the global median age is under 30 years old, which is incredible. So I think that everyone must make this effort to actually include the youth in their embassies, in their ministries, because they represent the largest segment of audience we're talking to.
Correct.
And they can provide insights about the issues and the causes that matter to them, and more importantly, how to reach them. You know, as governments, we don't only want our messaging to be delivered effectively and efficiently, but to also resonate with them. And I think we can all agree that the youth dominate the public content that is generated out there today. And so the more that we can engage them and make them involved in curating that narrative and that story, I think the better we'll have an opportunity to actually be the shapers of our own story.
Correct. So how do you value the current strategic relations between Bahrain and the United States of America?
The United States and Bahrain share a very rich and long relationship that spans over 100 years. And it first began with the arrival of American missionaries in Bahrain in the late 1800s. And I think it's important to note that the foundation of this relationship did not start with politics or security, it was by people. And I think over the years, we have seen that relationship grow and expand, now encompasses various sectors and fields, from defense to trade to the environment and health and even humanitarian. And I think we just focus on the defense relationship on its own because that has preserved regional stability and by extension global security.
Yeah.
And I think time and time again we've seen how we are actually reliable partners, dating back to the Gulf War, for example, where Bahrain assisted in U.S. operations, or the fact that Bahrain was the first country to join the U.S.-led coalition against Daesh, and more recently assisting the U.S. in the American evacuation from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So I think that these opportunities are an indication about how close we are and how trustworthy and reliable this friendship is actually.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about the bilateral efforts to consolidate those mutual relations on various aspects?
So diplomatic relations were established in 1971.
Yeah.
And then since then there, of course, many treaties and agreements that have been signed and ratified to essentially formalize the relationship. From the Defense Cooperation Agreement, which supports the presence of the U.S. fleet in Bahrain, or the Free Trade Agreement that was signed in 2004 that has generated billions of dinars worth of investment, of mutual investment. And then if we look at the fact that there are specific areas where we have collaborated on, for example, the U.S. have assisted in the development of the Ministry of Interior, in building expertise and training and exchanging information. Another area is like human rights, for example, where just a few months ago we inaugurated the Bahrain-U.S. Human Rights Dialogue, where we sit and collaborate, find new avenues where we can boost the field of human rights. Not to mention the countless visits by officials that are conducted annually. And that element actually is one of the most important ones because it humanizes the relationship and can, that face-to-face interaction can actually boost the brand image of both our countries in the eyes of people.
Correct. So you've mentioned and you talked about the presence of the American community in Bahrain. The American community here in Bahrain has a highly valued contribution to the development of Bahrain. Can you talk more about that?
So when I talk about agreements and documents that have been signed, yes, they are actually formalized pieces of documents that are necessary for a relationship to occur. But along with that comes the people. Over the years, we have hundreds and thousands of American families that have moved to Bahrain, not only for a better livelihood for themselves, but for a better life for themselves and their families. Today in Bahrain, we have over 200 U.S. companies that are based here. So of course, they've contributed to our economy and also found, created job opportunities for locals. Another aspect I think that we don't talk about enough in terms of contribution is when these families actually move to Bahrain, they fully integrate our society, meaning that we learn from their way of life and they learn from our way of life. So when we look at the bigger picture and that narrative of Arabs in the West, you're able to narrow that divide. You're able to build on those core values of acceptance and tolerance and understanding and peaceful coexistence. And I think that has an impact far beyond our borders.
Correct. So how do you view the future of Bahraini-American relations, considering, or let's say, the Bahraini-American relations and Bahrain's relations with the world?
We live in a very dynamic and ever-evolving global dynamics, honestly. And I think that we will continuously adapt that relationship and find new avenues to cooperate on, whether it is environmental sustainability, or it is cultural cooperation. I think finding those avenues are critical and it's important that we adapt very quickly. Globalization, for example, is at all-time high with travel and technology and access and information. We are closer than ever before and we have the opportunity to understand each other better than ever before. And I think that Bahrain will always find new partners and new friendships to form to essentially all work towards this common goal of achieving a better life for everyone. Yes,
correct. So what can you tell us about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs' upcoming plans to further enhance Bahraini-US relations?
Well, in fact, just last year we inaugurated the Bahrain-US Strategic Dialogue, which essentially is a platform for officials from across the board, from defense to trade to health, education and culture to come together and find new areas of our cooperation, as well as our challenges. You know, what areas can we do better on, and what can we learn from each other? And I think that's we will continue to find ways to expand that friendship. And again, this has an impact, yes, of course, on our bilateral relationship, but also bound to have an impact on the Arab world and the greater global community in general.
Of course, and it's important, just like you mentioned, or to look into the challenges as well. And how
Absolutely.
Yes, so before we conclude, would you like to add anything marking this occasion?
I think that I want to say that I'm very proud to be diplomat, and it's an honor to serve my country in any way I can. And I would highly encourage anyone who is interested in communication, is interested in representing their country in any form, to find opportunities and to engage with officials, to learn from them, because I think that is a very rewarding experience and fulfilling one that I think that they will be thankful for in the end.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us here at the studio on this special occasion.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Stay tuned. We will be back with more right after this. Welcome back. Since the establishment of the modern Bahraini state as an Arab and Muslim country founded by Ahmed al-Fatih in 1783, Bahrain has been and will always remain a land of peace, tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and firm respect for freedoms, as well as political, civil, and social rights. Therefore, Bahraini diplomacy is considered as a role model and a source of inspiration for the world. In this regard, as moderation and balance have been major pillars of Bahrain's diplomacy for more than 50 years. To talk more about that, we are pleased to be joined here at the studio by Diplomatic Attaché at Strategic Affairs Sector at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Balqis Janahi. Hello, Ms. Balqis, and thank you for joining us here at the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you tell us more about how you value the royal trust and constant support towards the diplomatic field?
Yes, of course. I greatly value the royal trust bestowed upon us by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, which is reflected in his constant support and continuous encouragement of the diplomatic field and the work that we do. I also value the constant support of His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister. And so the declaration of Diplomatic Day on the 14th of January is a great reflection of His Majesty's support to the work that we do, as he has accorded this day in celebration of the diplomatic corps in the Kingdom of Bahrain. His Majesty the King's wise leadership is the foundation of our foreign policy, and his vision of peace, tolerance, and coexistence is the principles that we work on in our international relations.
So Bahrain diplomacy became a role model for the world in peace and moderation. What can you tell us about that?
So the Kingdom of Bahrain is a great example of being a role model for countries around the world for peace and moderation. We have great examples of this all throughout our history, past and present. And one example that comes to mind is the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence. The center is the embodiment of His Majesty the King's vision for peace, tolerance, coexistence, and moderation. And it holds numerous important dialogue, conferences, and events that focus on peaceful coexistence, interfaith dialogue, as well as religious freedom.
As a Bahraini woman yourself, can you tell us more about Bahraini women's contribution to the constant success witnessed by Bahrain's diplomacy?
Yes, of course. The Kingdom of Bahrain has long recognized the important role that women play in all facets of society, and has empowered us and encouraged us to strive for excellence in all that we do.
Correct.
We see that reflected in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where Bahraini women diplomats have held leadership positions past and present.
Correct.
A great example of this is Her Excellency Sheikh Hamad bint Rashid Al Khalifa, who was the first female Bahraini ambassador and the third woman ever to hold the position of President of the United Nations General Assembly, being also the first Arab Muslim woman to hold this position. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs also boasts a great number of female ambassadors that represent the kingdom and try to strive to advance its position internationally. Women diplomats also make up 35% of diplomats within the ministry, and this figure actually is a great reflection of the work and contribution of females within the diplomatic field.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about the importance of sharing and spreading awareness about Bahraini stories of success in the diplomatic field?
So sharing success stories about Bahrain in the diplomatic field is important in two folds. Firstly, it can serve as immense encouragement and motivation for a generation of future diplomats who wish to represent the Kingdom of Bahrain and wish to be part of the diplomatic corps and represent us abroad. Secondly, it showcases to the nations of the world the achievements of the Kingdom of Bahrain. So this in turn serves as a great basis in strengthening our relationship, our existing relationships with our friends and allies, but also in fostering new relationships.
Correct. All right, so is there anything you'd like to add marking this occasion before we conclude?
I just want to emphasize that our work could not have been done without the continuous support and constant encouragement of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, as well as His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, as well as the support bestowed on women specifically by Her Royal Highness Sheikha Sabika bint Ibrahim Al Khalifa, His Majesty's wife, and the President of the Supreme Council for Women.
Thank you so much, Belqis, for joining us here at the studio today. We'll be back with more right after this short break. Welcome back. And now we turn to Fatoon Al-Amadi, who is the advisor of humanitarian team at the Office of the President of the United Nations General Assembly, who is joining us virtually from the United States. Hello, Ms. Fatoon, and welcome to this special coverage marking the Diplomatic Day. Being one of the Bahraini female diplomats, how do you value the contribution of Bahraini women to the development of Bahrain's diplomacy?
Thank you for having me today. I just wanted to say that starting from the first woman that joined the Foreign Service in 1972 to the present day, Bahraini women have proven that they are able to successfully contribute to the diplomatic field alongside their male counterparts. Today, I'm proud to say that we, the female diplomats, sum up to 33% of the total diplomatic workforce. And the status of the Bahraini women has changed from being wives of diplomats to very ambitious career diplomats. Each female diplomat is unique and is an added value. Starting from those young female diplomats and ending with the highest ranks of ambassadors and heads of mission.
Ms. Fatoon, can you tell us about your plans to develop your personal skills in the diplomatic field?
Ever since I joined the Foreign Service in 2017, my mindset has been in an ever-growing state. I considered every day as a new learning opportunity that will help me to develop and grow. On a personal level, I tend to participate and join most of the programs and initiatives offered by the ministry or by its training body, Mohammed bin Mubarak Al Khalifa's Academy for Diplomatic Studies. To boost my career, I also applied to the Prime Minister's Fellowship Program in 2019 and was proudly selected to be part of the 5th batch. Academic-wise, I plan to start my master's degree this year, inshallah, in the field of international relations or diplomacy. Our day-to-day tasks vary in the office. As an advisor in the OPGA, which is the office, I, alongside with my colleagues, provide the PGA with the support needed in executing his duties. So we brief the PGA on all issues pertaining to his activities. We organize thematic debates and briefings. We prepare talking points and meeting briefs. We draft the PGA speeches. We prepare for all of his travels and his arrangements and the dossiers related. I also wanted to say that entrenched in the 5 priorities of the PGA is his intention to mainstream gender equality in all of the discussions and the mandated events and any other high-level meetings. So as part of the gender team, my main role is to ensure that gender dimension is basically mainstreamed in all of the PGA's activities, events, and speeches. I also contribute in the preparation of the PGA's Advisory Board on Gender Equalities meetings. I also design and prepare a quarterly gender-related newsletter. And also alongside with the team, we tend to explore gender-related opportunities. And I just wanted to say that I look forward to going back to Capital and to reflect all of the knowledge and skills gained to better enhance the Bahraini diplomacy.
It is definitely a source of pride to represent the Kingdom of Bahrain at the office of the President of the United Nations. Can you tell us more about that?
It is an absolute honor and a privilege to be selected to represent the Kingdom of Bahrain in the OPGA, working implicitly in the United Nations, the world's main organization to maintain peace, security, and stability, and to provide humanitarian assistance when needed. Actually a very rich experience on its own, working explicitly under the leadership of the world's highest diplomatic rank in the OPGA as a young Bahraini female diplomat is a very rare and thriving experience. Serving all 193 member states of the United Nations and looking at things from a different perspective and lens has already taught me a lot in the field of multilateral diplomacy. This would have never happened without the trust and support I have received from my top management. And I just wanted to say that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
Thank you, Ms. Fatoon, for being with us. And that was Fatoon Al-Amadi, who is the advisor of the humanitarian team at the Office of the President of the United Nations General Assembly, who has joined us virtually from the United States. Stay tuned as we have more lined up right after this. We continue this coverage with a highlight on young Bahraini diplomats. With a spirit of ambition and hope, the promising generation of skillful Bahraini young diplomats proceed firmly in the path of achieving the national vision and ambitious agenda of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding the international policy and global coordination with other countries and universal organizations. This comes in line with the Kingdom's keen interest to empower young people and advocate their performance in the diplomatic field by equipping them with all required knowledge and skills in order to achieve aspired excellence of foreign policy. We start with the diplomatic attaché, Bahrain's embassy in Washington, D.C., Mariam Ismail Karimi, who is here with us in the studio. Hello, Ms. Mariam, and thank you for joining us here at the studio.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So as a female, Bahraini female, being one of the Bahraini female diplomats, how do you value the contribution of Bahraini women to the development of Bahrain's diplomacy?
I value it greatly, and it's obviously a matter that's very dear and close to my heart. I'm extremely thankful and grateful, I think, for Bahrain's leadership and for the vision of Her Royal Highness Princess Sabika bint Ibrahim Al Khalifa in advancing and empowering women and putting them on a caliber equal to men. I'm grateful for the women that had come before me that opened up doors and not only wanted to succeed but to thrive in their field and have provided opportunities of intelligence and experience and areas of knowledge that are new to us. Not only for myself, but for both women and men in my field to learn and to grow from. If I am where I am today, and if I've learned all the things that I've learned, it's due to those that have come before me. Ambassadors, leaders, colleagues, bosses who pushed us and wanted us to learn and wanted to empower us and wanted to advance us. And it matters a lot, and I value it greatly.
Of course. And thank you for being a sense of pride for our nation.
Thank you. I think with personal skills in general, and aside from the diplomatic field, there's an intention of walking into them with a lot of humility and openness.
Yeah.
There are things about diplomacy and diplomatic relations that remain the way that they were since their establishment, and a lot of things are very ever-changing and developing. And I think diplomacy or diplomatic skills aren't necessarily born with pen and paper.
Yeah.
For those skills, I'm extremely grateful for the Hamad bin Mubarak Academy of Diplomatic Studies in advancing us and providing those skills. But others, I think, are born in the field with engagement and questions and experience. For myself personally, developing these skills and harnessing them is often the product of the mentors that I've had that have opened the doors and have provided opportunities for me to learn. But it's also just a sense of joy towards the job and a willingness to learn, a willingness to experience all of these things. And I think with diplomacy, you just kind of walk in with an open mind and a sense of reception. And I hope to remain joyous about the job and the experiences I can gain.
Yeah.
And hopefully develop my personal skills from there.
Correct. So how do you value the great royal and government support provided to Bahraini young diplomats, being a young Bahraini diplomat yourself?
It's wonderful. I value, again, one of the other things that I value deeply and greatly, it's been extremely monumental for a lot of my colleagues and for myself. The visions of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, of empowering the youth, of having them occupy these spaces that I think for a lot of diplomats around the world, they aren't necessarily able to easily address or experience them. And I think sort of having leadership of that caliber, really having your back and supporting you and empowering you to occupy these spaces.
Correct.
To learn means a lot. It's wonderful when I even look at my colleagues in DC and they're young, active, and willing to learn. And there's that support, not only in the ministry, but places that go further high up that want you to succeed, that want to see you develop and do well. Correct. And it's within our diplomatic charter, it's in the way that we carry ourselves as an embassy, as individuals. And having that support, having someone that believes in your core and wanting them to succeed matters a lot. It matters greatly and makes a difference even in our charters and how we carry ourselves abroad.
Yeah, you're right, 100%. So can you tell us, is there anything you'd like to add before we conclude our special program?
Of course. Well, one, I'd like to wish all my fellow colleagues and the rest of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs a happy diplomatic day. I wanted to thank you for this opportunity and for this chance, and to thank our wonderful leadership for all the opportunities that they provided us and all these opportunities. And every boss and every woman and every colleague that I've had the privilege of working with that have been a support. It means a lot. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people before us that have taught us all the things that they've taught us and were mentors and opened up opportunities for us. And I'm very grateful for it. And hopefully it's a great diplomatic day this year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mariam, and thank you for joining us here on this special occasion.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Stay tuned as we continue our spotlight on young Bahraini diplomats right after this. Welcome back. We now turn to another young diplomat who's joining us virtually from the United Kingdom. We are joined by Mr. Fahad Al Bin Ali from the Kingdom of Bahrain's embassy in the United Kingdom. Hello, Mr. Fahad, and thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here today. Well, currently my main responsibilities at the embassy are twofold. Mainly, my key responsibility is for political outreach, which is strengthening the network of friends of Bahrain in the UK, with a special focus on members of parliament and UK officials. The second main role I perform here at the embassy is I'm also responsible for the human rights portfolio of Bahrain, given that the UK has a lot of interest in human rights in general and human rights in Bahrain specifically. I found that the two often have went hand in hand. So that's been an interesting mix and a busy portfolio, thankfully. So, yeah.
Can you tell us about your pride in representing your country at Bahrain's embassy in the UK?
It definitely has been an honor being able and being selected to serve at the embassy here in London. It's one of our most important embassy for Bahrain, but also internationally. It's a great opportunity to interact with other diplomats. The diplomatic community is huge here, and the politics is very busy, very intense, and very influential. So, and more so in the past few years. Our ambassador, Sheikh bin Hamad Al Khalifa, used to say that his previous ambassadors advised him before going to, before starting his posting here, that UK politics is usually stable, and you could predict which party would win or which won't. But what's interesting is, since we both have been posted here, there's been a number of general elections, a number of leadership changes, Brexit, the referendum, and then the outcome, and a pandemic. So it's been an excellent opportunity for learning, for self-development, and none of the embassy team, no member has lacked for any form of challenges. So it's been a very interesting period to serve. But another note I want to add is that while it is an honor to be a diplomat and to serve abroad, it is also important to remember that that honor is underlined by a huge responsibility. When you are representing your country abroad, you carry that with you. So the honor is twofold: being able to serve in London and then being able to be Bahraini diplomat in London.
How do you value the great royal and government support provided to Bahraini young diplomats?
It's an extremely valuable role, especially for the younger members of the diplomatic corps at the foreign ministry. I think it stands out because there is more trust in ability and capability than age on paper. So working at the foreign ministry, visiting Bahraini embassies abroad, you would see a representation of young Bahrainis along with older ones, men and women working together. So I think that the leadership have succeeded in creating an atmosphere of working together as part of a single team. Age, gender, what have you, does not matter, so long as you bring your best, deliver your best, and continue to serve. I think that's at the core of what we do. We're serving our country abroad, but we're also serving Bahrainis abroad, and we do our best to deliver on both. And there is a great sense of community in the foreign ministry and the team that serves, whether in Bahrain or outside, and that's extremely valuable, and it adds to our foreign policy.
Can you tell us about the different training courses and workshops that you have attended as part of preparation for your current position?
Training and development is very important, and I think what is unique about what is presented to Bahraini diplomats is the ability to explore, to learn more, to follow a curiosity, or go deeper into a specialization while fulfilling your job and duties. The amount of courses that are available to diplomats through the Sheikh Hamad bin Mubarak Academy is staggering. So from languages to business to economics to trade and what have you, IT, they are available, and you are expected to complete 70 hours a year. So not only are you allowed to self-develop or to expand your horizons and abilities, you are required to as part of your job. So that is unique and very encouraging as well. A lot of colleagues and friends and myself have explored some courses that we would not have had the time or opportunity to do otherwise, and it has been hugely enriching. For me, for example, I think prior to my posting here in London, what helped was studying the UK Constitution, which at the time I didn't think it was immediately relevant to me, but it has been unbelievably relevant, especially within the context of Brexit and the European Union. I also studied European law and human rights law, and that also became extremely relevant. So these learning opportunities, when you have an area of interest, you may not see an immediate application, but it's only a matter of time before it clicks and you have access to that knowledge, and you can deliver on your role, on your function with far more ability and knowledge than you initially would have thought. So it's hugely beneficial, and I think it is hugely valuable to members of the foreign ministry, but also as an example to set for other government institutions. I think that is something to be followed or replicated.
What were the challenges that you faced during performing your duties, and how did you overcome them?
No fulfilling job comes without challenges. If it's too easy, I think we've probably outgrown it, or it's not worth doing. Starting at the embassy in London, you know that a London posting comes with very high expectations, and you do need to deliver. But for me, I joined the foreign ministry after serving at the Independent Ombudsman Office. So I came with a different background, but that helped. There are things that come with any posting: being away from family, being away from friends, leaving your entire social circle behind, and then having to build a new one. You have to learn and adapt very quickly and understand the politics, the major players, the influencers, the opinion shapers of the country you're posted to in a relatively quick time, and then also engage and develop a network. So you do have to hit the ground running, and you keep running until you get the job done. But it has been, in terms of a growth opportunity, personal growth and professional, it's been huge. Other things you take away with you from serving abroad is, for me personally, I got married well posted here, had a child well posted here. So it's not something you would forget or leave behind after you come back. And I am honored and grateful to have had this chance and opportunity to serve abroad, to serve my country, to have a family at the same time, and that connection to Bahrain still stays strong. So yeah, it is a different sort of challenge, but nonetheless, it's one that makes you stronger and better able to serve.
Would you like to add anything remarking the special occasion before we conclude?
Yes, of course. So the status of a diplomat, being a diplomat, it's a huge honor and a huge privilege, but it's important to always keep in mind that that is underpinned by a huge responsibility to represent your country, to represent your people, to engage on its behalf. So while it is a great honor, the responsibility is far greater as well. And to be able to do that and to have that recognized and encouraged and on this day is extremely positive. So these are my closing remarks. Thank you for having me, and thank you for highlighting Bahraini Day of Diplomacy.
Thank you, Mr. Fahad, for being with us today. And that was Mr. Fahad Al Bin Ali from the Kingdom of Bahrain's Embassy in the United Kingdom. And this brings us to the end of our special coverage today, marking Bahrain's Diplomatic Day. We take this opportunity to highlight that peace has always been the symbol of the Kingdom of Bahrain's foreign policy and a path that illuminates the diplomatic process. We highlight that the diplomacy led by His Majesty the King considered peace a fundamental pillar in our international relations and believes in the importance of cooperation and dialogue among different nations, civilizations, and religions. And on that note, we commend the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its affiliates for taking this as their compass that guide them towards a prosperous future for the Kingdom's diplomacy and its standing in the world. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.